Let's talk about the other PUFA, omega 3s, which is also relatively unstable. I believe actually more unstable than the omega 6s.
Mhm.
How do you feel about those when it comes to brain health and beyond?
So the omega 3s are really interesting because it's easy for people to get confused. There are different types of omega 3s. So the types of omega 3s, these are also, as you said, these are fragile, long chain polyunsaturated fatty acids. And so these are also fragile, but these are essential to our health, as opposed to linoleic acid, which I argue in the book is not essential. But we do need these omega 3 fatty acids, and the ones the body and brain use are EPA and DHA. DHA throughout the body and throughout the brain, and EPA primarily in the body as an anti-inflammatory part of our immune system to fight inflammation. But in the brain, DHA serves irreplaceable functions in the brain, including during brain development, brain cell signaling, eye health, in terms of and making energy. So DHA is a really very special molecule that no other molecule can take its place because it's a very special configuration. The shape of DHA gives it what are called quantum mechanical properties, which just means that it acts as a semiconductor of electricity. So wherever electrons are busy, such as the electron transport chain inside your mitochondria, where energy is being made, in the retina of the eye, where sunlight is being the energy from sunlight is being transformed into electrical signals. All of the and when the brain is developing, and the DHA is important for guiding those nerve cells towards their final destinations as the brain is developing. DHA is busy in all of those places, and so now there's a third omega 3 called ALA. And ALA is found in both plant and animal foods. DHA and EPA, the ones our bodies are actually looking for, our bodies don't use ALA. The ones our bodies are looking for are only found in animal foods. And algae. Algae is neither a plant nor an animal, but you can't eat the algae and get the DHA and EPA out of it. You need to take a supplement that's been industrially extracted from the algae. And so for people who follow a vegan diet, it's very important to use an algae supplement. But so the ALA that's in plant foods and animal foods, we can theoretically convert some small percentage of it into EPA and perhaps a little bit into DHA, but it's extremely difficult and in some cases impossible. The conversion rates between ALA and DHA and EPA are somewhere between 0 and 9%. 9%, the champions of making this conversion are pregnant women who desperately need high quantities of DHA for the developing baby's brain. So they are the best at making this conversion. The rest of us are not very good at this. And so we really can't rely on plant sources of omega 3s to meet our needs, particularly during pregnancy and the first 1,000 days of life.
Okay, no, that was a great explanation. And given the importance of DHA and EPA, somebody that wants to maintain optimal brain health, should they consider taking in a food that's high in those on a regular basis, such as a fatty fish, such as salmon, or taking a fish oil supplement? How do you feel about those?
Well, in general, I'm definitely a whole foods first. I follow whole foods first philosophy. That's what I recommend. Our bodies are best able to absorb and regulate the intake of nutrients when they come from whole foods. Partly because those nutrients will exist in a context of other nutrients and macronutrients that allow us to make better use of those nutrients. So whole foods first is my mantra. But if you don't eat animal foods or you don't like these foods, you can take a supplement. It's just really important to research the quality of that supplement because, as you were saying, these polyunsaturated fatty acids are very fragile. So they go rancid quite easily, and then they've lost their power to be helpful to you. So make sure that you're taking a good quality omega-3 supplement from fish oil or krill, not from flaxseed or walnuts, chia, so forth. It needs to come, or algae, right? So it needs to come from algae or krill or fish oil. The other piece of that story, which I think is often overlooked, is that our requirement for omega-3 probably depends to a great deal on how much omega-6 we're taking in. Because, these two types of fatty acids, the omega-3s and omega-6s, they share certain pathways. And so if you overwhelm those pathways with too much omega-6 from, say, vegetable oil, you're probably going to need a lot more omega-3 fatty acids to rebalance that equation. So it's unclear exactly how much omega-3 we need, because most of us are eating so much omega-6 that it may make it look as if we need a lot more omega-3 than we actually do. So in addition to making sure you're taking in good sources of omega-3s, the DHA and EPA, it's also very important to minimize as much as you can your intake of the omega-6 fatty acids, the linoleic acid in particular.
So for somebody who's on a clean diet, say they're on the continuum of omnivore, more animal-based, or carnivore, the piece I still want to tease out, would they want to consider including fish on a regular basis, or would they get enough, DHA and EPA through like beef and other animal foods that they're eating?
That is the question. And I think that, as far as I know, there's no definitive answer to this question, because our need for these nutrients, and I will quote my friend and colleague Amber O'Hearn about this, our need for nutrients is context dependent. So how many of which types of nutrients you need depends on your dietary pattern. So for example, if you're eating a diet that's very high in refined carbohydrates, you're going to need an awful lot more, say, magnesium and B vitamins to extract the energy to process those carbohydrates. And so your need for those nutrients will be higher than if you're eating a diet where your metabolism is based more on fat than carbohydrate. So, and because all of these studies of our requirements for various nutrients are done in the context of a very high carbohydrate, high vegetable oil diet, it's really anybody's guess, how much we actually need. But I've asked experts about this, including the great Dr. Michael Crawford, who's really considered, the father of fish oil biology. I learned most of what I understand about DHA from listening to his lectures and reading his papers. I asked him at a conference once, do we have to eat seafood, or what if we ate animals, land animals that were eating a wild type diet, a diet that's appropriate for their species? And he said, it's interesting. The omega-3 content of animal fat used to be higher than it is now. And this is because we're not the only ones who aren't eating properly. Most of the animals we're eating are also not eating properly anymore. And so there's this, it behooves us all not just to eat better for ourselves, but also to make sure that that the animals that we rely on for our nutritional livelihood are humanely treated, fed a species appropriate diet, given ample access to the outdoors, that they lead as close to a natural life as they can for their own sake as well as for ours.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
If you've got PTSD, ADHD, OCD, eating disorders, early dementia, whatever the issue is, I will try to help you. My definition of a brain healthy diet is it has to nourish the brain, protect the brain, energize the brain. You can see dramatic improvement.